Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio. Ours is a place where dreams take flight, voices are heard, and stories are shared. This is where cultures meet, connections are formed, and ideas are transformed into action. This is your destination for authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations. We're where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover our world of education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our USA Global TV channel and download our USA Global TV app. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. With heartfelt thanks to our executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, music scored by Yifei Tang from Cloud Road Music, creative direction by Paul Garcia, and I'm Alcini, and I'm very proud to be part of the USA Global TV and Radio family. So join us here at USA Global TV and Radio. Make us your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication, or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited. Thank you for being a part of our global community. Let's inspire together.
Howdy, Red O'Loughlin here. We're on the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And I have 3 shows today, every Thursday. And today my show is called The Wise Ones because we're going to learn a lot today, particularly in some areas that I think almost everybody has a need. Improvement in their freedom of their time, their life, and everything. Anyway, before I get that started, a little bit about me. I'm primarily a researcher. I research the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking. I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, fix a problem. Treat symptoms, and you'll always be treating symptoms. But in reality, that cause is still there and may get worse. So that's what I talk about. That's what I speak about. That's what I write about. And when I'm not doing that, I help authors get their books published. I've got a couple, 3 authors here. I'm working with one right now in Austria. I published one for a guy in Dubai a couple of months ago, another one for a lady in Mississippi. So I work with primarily new authors getting their books published. And beyond that, I think that's probably enough about me. We will get right into our guest today, Beatty Carmichael. He's an author, a speaker, an entrepreneur, and he's got a world of information that I want to just dive into today. Beatty, please join me up here on stage.
Hey, well, thank you. And thanks for having me, Red.
Okay, you had the book over your right shoulder called
The Prayer of Freedom.
The Prayer of Freedom. My eyes are starting to go a little blurry there. You wrote that book. Why?
I wrote it because specifically God told me to. I didn't want to. But kind of the backstory, Red, is I'm a business owner. And about 10 years ago, God started to direct me to pray for people for healing. And he started to heal them at a 90% success rate. And since you're on the medical side of things, let me define my term of healing, because this comes up a lot. For me, when I say someone is healed, it means that all of the symptoms have completely disappeared.
Okay.
So if they have glaucoma and they can't see out of their left eye, and I pray for them, now they can completely see perfectly clear, I would say that's being healed. If they have back pain, knee pain, anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, addictions, and now all of that's disappeared, then that's kind of the term I'm using is healing. So for about 6 or 7 years, as I would be praying for people, and I would just go out to Walmart, places like that, God would heal them. And I saw about 100 people a year, just their lives totally changed. And then God took it away. I'd go out and pray for people, and nothing happened. And I said, God, what happened? He said, well, I took your gift away. And I said, why? And he said, because I want you now to learn to do it by authority. And I understood that meaning teaching people how to have authority over those same issues that are bothering them. So I modified the process and started to perfect a way that people can pray on their own to the God of the universe. And I started seeing the same thing. About 90% of those people being completely healed of whatever their issues were. And then I started to get this impression God wanted me to write this into a book. And I had to ask him 3 times. I said, "Are you sure you want me to write this as a book? Because you know how much effort it takes to write a book, and especially for someone like me, it's 100% focus. I've got a business over here, and God is telling me to write a book." And he told me 3 separate times to set his people free, to write the book. And so that's why I wrote it, because he told me to. But what the book is, this is real interesting, Red, is you work at things at the molecular level. I work at things at the spiritual level. And what I have found, this is what my father-in-law, he's deceased now, but he was a physician for 50 years. And he would always tell his patients that health is based on 3 things. Number 1, it's physical, mental, and spiritual. And so as you have a problem, he would sit down with you, discuss your life, and pinpoint, is this a physical, mental, or spiritual issue? And then he would prescribe a modality, a therapy, to work with it, and he had a really high success rate. Our medicine today has really abandoned the spiritual part. So now it says it's either mental or physical. And this is why I believe so many people are stuck with chronic, persistent issues, whether it's mental health issues like anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, ADHD, things of that sort, or if it's chronic pain like rheumatoid arthritis or osteoarthritis or fibromyalgia or lupus or muscle pain or neuropathy, or whether it's just sicknesses like asthma or allergies or diabetes or sleep apnea, things of that sort. I've seen all of these completely disappear out of people's lives by handling it as a spiritual issue rather than a mental or physical issue. So that's why I wrote the book, to set people free. And what the book, The Prayer of Freedom, is all about is the modality. How do you do this on your own? So back to you, but that's maybe a longer answer as to the short question.
Well, it's interesting because the focus is now changed on you being the conduit of the healing, that you're teaching the person how to heal themselves. Is that a fair way of talking?
Yes. With the book, so I'm the teacher. I'm one that I'm the pioneer. I'm the trailblazer. Right? If you think of the United States, the pioneers went out west, they developed the trails, found the routes, and then society came in and created community. So I'm that pioneer who's gone out and figured out what's the process using the ancient biblical text on what it talks about in terms of healing when it's a spiritual issue. And I've developed a step-by-step process. This is really interesting. You'll enjoy this, Red, and also the listeners. I teach as a volunteer at an addiction recovery center. And it's one of the largest ones in North America. It houses over 500 women. And my class is the favorite because statistically, 87% of the ladies who go through this process find all of their issues completely disappear out of their life. And when I say all, I'm talking about probably 90% of all of their issues. So when they make a list, I'll have them make a list of the issues going on in their life. I don't know if you can see this, but this is one of those lists that this lady put together. Everything from darkness in her mind on a scale of 10. This is the column before she began this process. Everything you'll see is a 10. So bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, voices in her head, problems with mom and dad, arthritis in her back, arthritis in her hips, knee pain, back pain, restless leg syndrome, bipolar, COPD, neuropathy, and then addiction to pornography and addiction to cigarettes. And then you'll notice with her, on this particular one, after just 30 days, she's one of the ones that measured not successful in my mind. So this is the column, this far right column here. Everything went down to a 2 or a 3 in just 30 days of using strictly the spiritual approach. However, when I measure this with everyone else, I was doing 3 classes at the time, and this is one of those people of the 3 classes. When I went through this, 87% of them, within 30 days, everything had gone to a 0. I mean, really significant. So what I started to do with this book is I tested it there to make sure the process worked independently of me, because I did not help them. I didn't guide them through it. I simply gave them the worksheet and the process to go through. And that's what's in my book. Is it has a worksheet that you go through, making a list of things where there could be what I call spiritual open doors, and we'll discuss that as you want to. And then a process on how to, through a modality of prayer, actually close those doors. And when you close the door, the issues disappear. So like one lady, her name is Ashley. You'll actually see this right above my head. You'll see the prayerfreedombook.com. If you go there, it's one thing that's really cool there is there's a lot of video on-camera testimonials. One of them is this lady named Ashley. But it's also cool because if you go there, I've got several live demonstrations where I'm on different TV and podcast shows, and I'm guiding the host through this process, and you see them getting healed in real time. And
Wow.
It's really, really cool. But this lady, Ashley, she was abused and molested and raped at age 6 and 7, and she started to spiral down mentally, anxiety, bipolar disorder, all kinds of depression. And by the time I met up with her at the Addiction Recovery Clinic, she was on 400 milligrams a day of Seroquel to calm her nerves. She was taking Zoloft and Buspirone. She was frantic every day. She'd wake up afraid, okay? And it was this deep trauma. And she said, as she went through this, the very next morning, it was completely gone. She went to the psychiatrist there at the center and said, I feel fine. Do I still need to keep taking these drugs? And the psychiatrist said, well, if you don't need them, don't take them. Let's just see what happens. That was like 6 months ago, and she hadn't gone back. And so what this does is that when you close these spiritual doors that create these issues in our lives, that the medical community is saying, well, this is a medical issue. No, it's actually a spiritual issue. If a spiritual process causes it to disappear, then it wasn't medical, it was spiritual. And that's why those drugs didn't help. It dumbed her down, but it didn't get rid of it. When she addressed it spiritually, it all disappeared. And that's what I'm finding, Red, is so many of the things that we live with in life that we just put up with or actually have a spiritual root. Just yesterday, this is really cool. Let me share what happened in just, let's see, today's Thursday, in just the last 4 days, okay? Last 4 days, I met a woman who had constant anxiety for years, and in about 10 minutes, as I was guiding her through this process, it was totally gone. I met another man who, for I think 10 or 12, 15 years now, his left ear was completely deaf. An explosion just totally destroyed his eardrum. His right ear, he had to have a hearing aid just to begin to hear a little bit. And in about 30 minutes guiding him through this process, as I would be clicking on both sides of his ears, he could hear perfectly well on both ears. They were completely opened. And then just yesterday, this lady was in a crippling arthritis mode. She's walking with a walker. She's only probably about 45 years old. And she's been in this condition, could barely walk, racked with pain. Doctors couldn't figure it out. And in about 15 minutes, as I was guiding her through this process, she's walking completely pain-free, walking better than she's walked in years, and she's not using her cane and she's not using her walker. So what happens is all three of these show that these are things that are issues that all of us are aware of. We have friends and loved ones that have these type of issues, and we have them ourselves. And we think it's simply a normal part of life, and the doctors tell us it's incurable. But it's incurable if you only look at it as a physical or mental issue. But if you start to bring back the spiritual component of health and address it as possibly a spiritual issue with the prayer of freedom, I'm finding that nearly 90% of those issues disappear usually within 1 day. And with those that I work with, it's usually probably about 15 or 20 minutes.
I noticed on your website there's a statement there that 7 generations of doctors in your lineage.
Yes.
Are you considering yourself as an 8th based on the results you're getting?
Yeah, so if we change the term doctor, I am. So watch this. And so I'm a marketer. So marketing is all about using the right words and framing the right message. So 7 generations, almost 200 years of medical doctors. And what you find is there must be kind of like a spiritual mantle in my family line for bringing healing. So if we change the focus of medical doctor to healer, then I am the 8th generation of healers. I've just changed the process and modality from medicine to spiritual. So I guess you'd call me a spiritual doctor while they were medical doctors. And so now that's 8 generations.
Okay, well, let me ask you a personal question. We didn't cover this backstage, but is there a 9th generation coming along?
Not on my line, but on my brother's line, there's actually one of my nieces she's a nurse practitioner, I think that's it, I forget the levels, but she's at that level where she can prescribe medication, and it's just below being a doctor. So that's the closest that we're getting to so far.
I would count that as one. There's no reason not to.
Right. Yeah, she actually knows more about medicine than my grandfather did, because, he practiced medicine until he was 85. And back in the old days where, he was around when penicillin came about, and that was a miracle drug that saved so many people's lives. And then all these things that he started to find out were the reasons people were sick, like staph infection would kill most people, and now we can get rid of it a lot of times. And now my niece is more capable than he was, even though she's not a medical doctor, but things have advanced so much. So I guess you could say that now we're on generation 9.
It's interesting. You look back 100 years and the things the doctors were doing. This is between the 2 world wars for treatments, and one of them was sunrooms, solariums, getting sunshine, and
Yes.
had an amazing curative rate. They were using honey for wounds because it would isolate that area. One of the things I find to be really interesting is the fact that pregnant women who got gestational diabetes, the doctors gave them more, I want to say it's zinc. I'm pretty sure it was zinc. I could be wrong on that one right this second because I'm pulling it out of my brain. But by increasing their zinc, and let's just say that's what it is for right this minute, and don't take me to the bank on that one.
Yep.
Go talk to your doctor if you're going to change it. But by just doing it, because the baby, the fetuses, were taking the mother's, no, it's chromium is what it's chromium. They would take the mother's chromium down to levels that the gestational diabetes would occur. And so by supplementing them with chromium, the gestational diabetes went away. But after World War II, they stopped doing that because there was no testing. Oh, we don't believe in that. Umpty, doesn't matter. But it's interesting that what worked all of a sudden didn't work because I don't have a test that proves that it works. And
Right. That's actually that's one of the biggest pushbacks I get with my program. Not my program, but the whole concept of being able to pray for healing. The Bible is clear. The Bible says that if you turn against the God of the universe, then there's a consequence, and he defines the consequence as disasters in your life, sickness. So like this would be a physical malady, like maybe glaucoma or a limp arm, something that doesn't work. Mental issues like anxiety and depression, and physical pain. Those are the things that the Bible speaks about, that when you turn against this God of the universe, those things happen. But it also says that if you turn back to God and confess that you were wrong on those things, that they will disappear. The actual specific passage, James 5:16, says, confess that you were wrong and you shall be healed. And what I'm doing is I'm just following that process, but someone was saying, well, I won't believe it unless you have a clinical test on it and can show, control group and a placebo group. I said, well, that may or may not ever occur, but when I see people with deaf ears open, blind eyes open, people getting rid of diabetes, getting rid of sleep apnea and addictions and anxiety and depression and all these things that the medical community says is incurable, and it actually goes away. It's so easy to test. Anyone can do this on their own. But that's my big pushback, because they say, well, I want to see medical tests. I said, well, you won't. You'll never see a medical test on this because it's not medicine. It's spiritual.
Well, we're going to be going to break here in just a few seconds, but I know that our current medical, especially Western medicine, more so than Eastern, they have a moral and a legal obligation if they know you have a problem to treat it. And so, but again, you as the individual can say, hey, doc, what if I do this and I come back in 3 months and we'll see if it's any better. There are a lot of options in there that people don't know about, and so there are options that can be taken, but we'll get into that after the break. So let's go to break here, and we'll be back in about a minute and a half.
What if one simple skill could change the way you connect with the world? What if listening could open doors to deeper relationships, stronger businesses, and a better you? Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, the Listening Mentor, brings you USA Global TV and Radio, a space where voices are heard, ideas are shared, and global communities thrive. Through the elevated listeners' courses and books, you'll master the power of listening, set boundaries with confidence, and transform conversations into opportunities. Join us. Listen, learn, elevate. Whether you're a leader, a coach, a business owner, or someone seeking stronger connections, your journey starts today. Subscribe, learn, and transform today.
Howdy, Reverend Laughlin here. We're on the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. My guest today is Beatty Carmichael, author, speaker, entrepreneur, involved in healing. So getting back to our medical society, they have their own set of rules, and the testing, that's part of their DNA. But again, if I'm saying, hey doc, I got my good buddy over here, Beatty. He has some options that I want to try. In addition, I want to go exercise more, lose some weight, eat more balanced nutrition. Let me come back to you in 30, 60, 90 days. Unless you're really pushing the envelope of something serious, they're going to say, yeah, come back in 60 days and we'll take a look at things. And so there's nothing saying that because I had all these symptoms ahead of time, I didn't lose weight, I didn't exercise, but I went and talked to Beatty and we had a good conversation, and whatever problem I have seems to have gone away. I can go back to that doctor. They can run the same test and say, well, whatever it is there. That in a sense is a test, but it's not a controlled test.
Right, exactly.
And there's no variables. I mean, I'm going to be talking about microplastics coming up here in the next hour. And I look at it's fairly new within 21 years, but there's not a lot of testing that says anything, and it's just very difficult to. But you back up, a few decades, and yet smoking. For how many decades was smoking okay? And then all of a sudden it's not, but it took forever to actually put a warning label on something. It's interesting, that whole evolution. But what I want to cover right now is balance. Would I, Red Laughlin, assess the balance in my life?
Talking about like from a health and then the spiritual approach with the prayer freedom.
Well, I have my health, my mental, my physical, my emotional. I have my financial, my spiritual, my relationships. I mean, I have a lot of different aspects. If I have a problem with gambling addiction, I have a problem with pornography, I have a problem with smoking. What do I do in order to assess my condition, self-assessment? Is that what you help with? Does a book help with that?
So what I find, by the way, every one of those things you've listed are almost always a spiritual root issue. See, here's the way the spiritual roots work. In a very simplistic sense, when God made man and made you and me, he places inside of us a conscience. And in that conscience is his standards of right and wrong. This is why when we go in and do something and it's wrong, we feel guilty. And no one has to tell us that we did something wrong. And when we go and do something good for people, we feel really good inside. And no one had to tell us that we did something good. In other words, this conscience is designed to guide us and help us walk down that path of what this God of the universe says is right and wrong. When we violate that conscience and we do something wrong, just like a father, this is my picture of how this works. As a father, if one of my children disobeys me, I'm going to discipline him to bring about correction. Okay? It may be a spank on the bottom. It may be a timeout. It may be taking away a privilege. But the whole idea is to create discomfort so that my child learns to do right instead of wrong. And that's the way I see this process, because when we simply confess that we did something wrong, and there's a specific process of how you confess it. When we confess that we did something wrong, then it seems like something that is going on in our life disappears. Let me give you a couple of very simple examples. One of the show hosts I worked with, and you'll actually see this on my website, theprayerfreedombook.com, right above me, she was a lady, and I did this demonstration with her. The demonstration, she had neuropathy in her legs. On a scale of 0 to 10, it was a pain level of 8, and she's had it about 15 years. And the doctors say there's nothing you can do about it. It's a neurological issue, and we don't know why it's there, and we don't know how to get rid of it. And I said, well, that's a spiritual issue, and it'll probably leave within 5 minutes if you let me guide you through this. So on the show, I'm walking her through this process. And for her, the spiritual thing that she did that was wrong was about 15 years ago. Notice the timeline. 15 years ago is when this happened, and she's had neuropathy for about 15 years. Someone hurt her, and she did not forgive that person. She's held unforgiveness. So literally, as we're doing this, God brings to her mind that person, and I guide her in the proper approach on how to forgive spiritually. And she said, as soon as I did, you actually see her tears start well up, but instantly the neuropathy in her legs completely disappeared. On the same show, not on the same show, but on the same page, another show, this guy has had anxiety and depression. Scale of 0 to 10, it was an 8. He's had it since he's 41 years old, and he's had it since he was 14 years old. So what's that, about 25, 26, 27 years? My math is bad these days. But for a long time. And it's never left. And on the show, you'll hear him go, it's going down. It's at a 3. It's gone. I mean, it literally just disappears right there on the show. I was asking him the same thing I asked with the lady with the neuropathy. How long has it been since you've been without neuropathy pain or without that anxiety and depression, depending on which host it was? And they said it's never gone ever since it started until now. So in terms of how do you live your life, or how do you assess if this is your issue is a spiritual issue or not, I find that about 90% of the time, if it's persistent in your life, it's almost always spiritual. Almost always. That's why I'm believing that only about 90% of the time, only 90% of the time, this is highly effective. But the simple thing to do is the first several chapters of my book explain what's going on, so it makes it easy to kind of grasp it. And then chapter 12, which is only a handful of pages, is actually the entire process. So as you go through this, so this is my book, and chapter 12 is just this little part right here in the middle. See if I can show this to you. This is chapter 12. It's simply the worksheet that takes for most people about an hour to go through, or maybe 30 minutes. It's just 18 different categories of where sometimes we violate our conscience, God's standards. So we know then that we ought to say, I was wrong to do that. I was wrong to steal that money. I was wrong to take that oath when I was in high school, that secret oath that was something against God, whatever it may have been. There's consequences to it. And then it has the simple prayer process that you go through to actually close those doors. And the whole thing will take just a couple of hours for most people to do the entire thing. The part that I do on the show is sort of a demonstration thing, and only takes about 10 minutes. So it's very fast, but it's thorough. And I would say for anyone who's suffering, or they have a loved one that's suffering with any sort of persistent issue in their life, whether it's persistent relationship conflicts, every time they're blowing up at their partner or their spouse, and they don't know why, they don't want to blow up at them, but they can't stop. Or if it's an addiction urge, like you mentioned, pornography or gambling, or sex, or alcohol or drugs, or whatever the addiction is. Or if it's a mental health issues like anxiety or depression, anything that you're taking ongoing medication for, anything that is, it's just taking away your quality of life. If there's anything like that, then 90% of the time I'm seeing those things completely disappear in reverse when you treat it as a spiritual approach by simply going through chapter 12 in my book. And it walks you through step by step what to do and exactly how to pray through it. And there you go.
Okay, so if I'm taking this chapter 12, and I asked earlier, how do I assess myself as if I were that same person you talked about, is there a sentence in there or a section that says forgiveness? And
Yes.
you start thinking back, I mean, obviously our current thoughts are here, but do we remember stuff 10, 20, 30 years back
Yeah.
in reality?
We do, but not by ourselves. So this is the cool part. If we, so I look at this as at a macro level, and the macro level, Red, is this God of the universe is our parent. You know, a lot of times in different religions we'll call him God the Father. We're the Son. We're the child of God. And just as I, as a father, and I have my son who's misbehaving, and I take away his toy or something, and he says, "Why do you take it away?" I'm not going to say, "Well, you figure it out." I'm going to say, "It's because you did this." Because I want him to learn, and I want him to correct his actions, and I want him to say, "Daddy, I'm sorry I did that." And then I give his toy back. So the way I've got this set up, and this is the way it's set up in the book, is you simply ask God, say, "I've got these issues in my life I want to get rid of. Please bring to my mind," let's say forgiveness, "any person that I haven't forgiven that I need to forgive." And now at that point, because God, your Heavenly Father, wants you to be free of the discipline, if we use these human terms, then he's going to put in your mind something that may have happened many years back. Here's a perfect example. I had pulled a ligament in my right thumb right here, which means I could not grab a glass. It would hurt. I exercised with free weights and dumbbells and things like that, and I could no longer exercise with my right hand because just holding a 5-pound dumbbell was too painful. And I was really disappointed because I knew it was going to be 6 weeks before that thing heals naturally. And 4 days in, I thought, I wonder if there's a spiritual root to this. So I said, "God, if there's a spiritual root to this, bring it to my mind." And what came to my mind, now keep in mind, right now I'm 60 years old. 53 years ago, I was 7. And I remember I was trying to interrupt a conversation between my grandmother and my mother because there was something I thought was important. And I kept interrupting, and my grandmother snapped at me, "Beatty, shut up, hush up," or something like that. And it hurt me. And I've always held this bitterness. And that passed through my mind. So I said, okay, I forgive my grandmother. She's dead, but there's still that spiritual violation that I did. And I woke up the next morning, and my hand was completely healed. And I tested it. I grabbed things as hard as I could. I lifted heavy objects like this where my thumb had to hold on to it. And it was perfectly strong, no longer a stretched tendon or ligament. So that's what I'm talking about. When you go through this process, we're asking God to bring to your mind what needs to be on that list so that you can close those spiritual doors and get free of these issues.
Let me give you a reinforcement of what you were talking about. I was at a spiritual event at my church many years ago, and they're talking about forgiveness. And they said, there are people in your life, you can't walk up to them and say, but take your finger and write on the palm of your hand their name. So at that point in time, my wife's boss was really creating a lot of problems. And my wife would bring those problems home, and I would have the same problems my wife was having. And I would see her when I pick her up, and it just really emotionally upset me. So I wrote her name there, and he said, "Okay, now you look at that name, and then just throw it away, let it go, and just let it see it fade. Just whatever happens, it's just going to fade away. It's not going to exist anymore." So I did that, and for a couple other people too. And it wasn't even a week later. We were meeting somewhere. It wasn't at her work. And she walks out, and all of those emotions that I had previously never appeared.
Isn't that amazing? Same
because
thing.
because I allowed that thought, that forgiveness, whatever entity, I allowed that to get away from me.
Yes.
And so that was a big mind opener right there, as far as the power of the brain over itself in recognizing certain things. So
It's really powerful. In fact, unforgiveness is the number one issue. I find that probably if we use the term healings, okay, 60 to 70% of all the things I see people healed from is tied almost either directly or mostly directly to unforgiveness.
we're getting closer to the end of the show, and I know you like to go into a little bit of detail, so I'm going to give you that time right now. And then if we need to cover up anything else at the end. But how do people reach you? How do they get through your book? Do you have any events coming up that people ought to know about?
Yeah, so best way to reach me and everything about me starts at the website for my book called theprayeroffreedombook.com. And just type it in, theprayeroffreedombook.com. There's a lot of great information. It's an overview of the book. There's what I call a book trailer. So if you want to understand at a deeper level what's going on, see some of the impact that this is doing. If you want to watch miraculous healing at play, I mean literally watch it happen on the screen, go to theprayeroffreedombook.com. There's also a link that you can get the book. And there's some more information where you can go in deeper. I have what's called a master class that's kind of like the next step if you want to learn. After you go through the book, you want to really understand this more so you can help people yourself, then you'll see some of that information there. So that's probably the starting point and probably the only best place to go right now. There are no events I've got going on that I can really promote. I'm doing something out in Missouri at the end of October, and I forget where because it's a bunch of little towns. It's about 45 minutes from Branson, and all these little towns are like 7,000 in this town, and maybe there's one of 3,000. And all I know is I'm headed out there for a week and speaking at a bunch of churches and civic centers. But if anyone's in kind of western Missouri or someplace near in that area, and you would like to attend one of those, if you reach out to me, you can find me directly at my website, BeattyCarmichael.com. You'll see it on the website, on the screen here, Beatty Carmichael, and then just add a .com. And there's a Contact Us page. And if you have an interest in showing up on that, is the very last week in October. So reach out to me there.
Okay, for our audio audience that may pick this up later on, Beatty, Beatty, Carmichael, Carmichael.com. Let me repeat that. Beatty, BeattyCarmichael.com. I noticed on your website, BeattyMichael.com, that you have Christian audiences and general audiences.
Yeah.
Can you give me literally a 20-second, what's the difference between the two focuses?
Yeah, Christian audiences, I give you the scriptures from the Bible. And general audiences, I talk in terms of dark energy, light energy, and spiritual things, but I really kind of leave most of the scriptural references out. That's about the only difference.
Beatty, I truly enjoyed today. I learned a lot. I appreciate that. And as always, it's always worth the cost of admission when you learn stuff.
Absolutely.
And so I look forward to our next conversation because I just see it down the road not too far. And I certainly welcome you back to the USA Global TV and Radio Network, whether it's on one of my shows or another host. So with that, I bid you adieu, and we will catch you later on. Take care.
Thank you.
Brett O'Loughlin here. We're getting ready to end the show in less than a minute. And I will be talking on my show, Talking Heads. The presentation today is on microplastics, nanoplastics. What are they? Where do they come from? What do they do in the body? What can we do to minimize, get rid of them? So we can talk about the world of microplastics today. It's a fairly new area, probably since about 2000. I think the term microplastics was coined in 2004. But there's been so little studies on it, so few studies, that we still really don't know. Although when you start doing some real analytical work, there's a lot of stuff there. So Please join me if you can on Talking Heads on the USA Global TV and Radio Network coming up in about 20 minutes. After that, 17 minutes, it looks like. Take care, y'all. Bye now.
Get ready to wear the brand that's changing the world of media. Introducing the official USA Global TV and Radio online store. From our TV show hosts to our incredible global guests, you asked, we delivered. Rep your appearance with pride. Whether you've been on air, hosted a show, or tuned in, we have something just for you. Visit us at usaglobaltvradioshoп.myspreadshop.com and start shopping today. Check back frequently. We're dropping fresh new designs all the time. Showcase your role in our global community. These designs celebrate your voice, your story, your presence. It's more than just merchandise. It's a movement of hope, inspiration, education, and elevated listening. Head to usaglobaltvradioshoп.myspreadshop.com. Your spotlight awaits. USA Global TV and Radio. Elevate your style. Elevate the world.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dyes. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.